If you're a recruiter or a hiring manager, do you really know how to write effective job ads? Is that your job? You know, job ads that really stand out because they're more interesting to read. Job ads that are more likely to get noticed by the right candidates, even those coveted passive candidates or hard to find candidates. My next guest started in the recruiting industry. He's a veteran. He's been there for over 30 years. If you spend any time on LinkedIn, you've probably seen his posts because he's always showing up on my newsfeed and posting articles and insights about recruiting and candidate engagement. He's the founder of copywritingforrecruiters.com. And today we're going to be talking about a tried and tested formula for how to write effective job ads that you can implement not only on your job ads, but also future LinkedIn invites, emails, and even candidate conversations. Because you see, there's more to recruiting than just posting jobs on job boards. Please welcome to the show, Mitch Sullivan.
Hey, Jeff. Nice to be with you again. How are you?
Fantastic. Got this from somebody from across the pond finally on the show. It's great to have.
Am I the first? Am I the first live?
I think you're the first. I don't think you're the first that actually booked. I think somebody got COVID and they had to drop out, but they're going to be on next week. So hopefully she's feeling better. So tell me a little bit about your background. I know you've been doing this for a long time, 30 years, but you started off as a contingency and then you moved into a retained recruiter. How did you get into the whole copywriting stuff? Give me a couple minutes on your background.
Yeah, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. I came into recruitment relatively late. I was in my late 20s. My first recruitment job was working for a contingency recruitment business, doing sales recruitment. My background had been in sales up until that point. And my first job was actually as a manager. I was managing 3 people. And I'd come from a B2C sales job where I was managing 25. And I thought it would be one of the cushiest things I'd ever done. And boy, was I wrong. It was, yeah, I mean, I can't get into how much of a mind mess it was. But we did well. It was the first London office for that particular business. But it kind of burnt me out because I hadn't been able to get my head around recruitment, particularly contingency. But anyway, I went to work for another recruitment business as a consultant, did well there, moved to Switzerland, worked for myself. By this time, I'd developed a liking for content, for writing, and writing job ads. And I kind of taught myself. I read a ton of books. I used to follow ad agencies and look at ads, and I'd cut ads out of newspapers and magazines that I liked, that I thought I could do something with in a recruitment context. And it was through that. And this is, by now, we're at the back end of when we were still putting job ads out in magazines and newspapers.
Just the good old days, right?
Oh, in some ways, the good old days, in some ways not.
I can still smell the newsprint.
Yeah, well, there was those certain days where there was a job section, the main job section in whatever sort of publication you were running ads in. But so I got pretty good at putting out ads that particularly were visually quite striking, quite good at coming up with headlines. The copy was so-so when I look back on it now. But it was through my ability to create job ads that stood out that I started to convert clients to retain me. If only because I'm putting a lot of work up front here and creating this ad, doing the thinking, meeting the hiring manager, having the intake meeting and everything else. I need some of the money up front. It was successful to a point. It was in Switzerland, different market, different culture. Brought that back to UK, worked in-house for 4 years, which intellectually was an important phase of my life. I learned so much more about recruitment. You know, I probably learned 80%, but I learned another 15% in 3 years working in-house. It joined up a lot of dots for me, which we can perhaps go into another time. And about 7 years ago, I started Copywriting for Recruiters, which originally was just a training course that my training partner and I took on the road, and we traveled up and down the UK, delivering it in classrooms to in-house teams, agency teams, and mixed open groups. So it was fully road tested, and we finally got it launched online 18 months ago, right at the same time that the first lockdown happened over here anyway.
Good timing, right?
In a way, yeah. I think, it's sort of grown steadily since then. But yeah, I had a following already, and we'd already trained some 600-700 recruiters. The word of mouth was very good, so that kind of helped for sure. But it's a different product because obviously training people remotely is a different challenge to training them in the same physical room.
Yeah, I don't know. Me personally, I actually like learning through videos and things like that because I can push pause, rewind,
Yeah.
watch that 3 or 4 times. I can take notes, a lot more detailed notes. So today we're going to be talking about copywriting for recruiters and how they can write better job ads today. So why don't we start off by really explaining what your definition is of a job ad?
Okay, well, first thing, job ad is not a job description. Those are two different things, and they get conflated all of the time. A lot of people think I'm just being pedantic or picky, but I'm not. They do two completely different jobs. A job ad makes somebody want to read a job description, but I don't believe anyone who doesn't need another job will be prepared to read a job description right from the get-go. They quickly need to find out whether it's a job that they'd want to do for whatever reason.
Completely agree. So back in 1995, quick little story here. Back in 1995, we were working with a ATS CRM company. It's one of the larger ones now. And they only had a job description area. I was like, guys, this is great. Love it. Need it. However, I can't post this job description on all the different job boards or even on my own website because it's a job description. It's not a job advertisement. I need a separate section in the database, one for the job ad, one for the job advert, so that we can put whatever we want in there. And a little bell went off in their head, I think. And now just about every ATS and CRM has two separate areas, one for the job ad, one for the job advert, and one for the job post. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, essentially. A job ad for those with natural ability can be freeform. Yeah. But most people who are good at writing any kind of advertising tend to follow a similar structure, which, is the AIDA formula, which stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. I mean, that's been the basic DNA of all direct response advertising in all industries, well, forever, really. So, if you don't grab people's attention, chances are they'll miss it. So if they're scrolling their newsfeed and there's a sentence that please read this job description, they're probably going to keep scrolling past. But if there's a statement that alludes to a benefit that could apply to them, they're more apt to stop and look at it and maybe click the link. That's basically what grabbing someone's attention is.
So would you also consider, let's say I don't post the entire job description or job advertisement, but I'm sending out messages to people on LinkedIn. You only get 200 characters, 300 characters, whatever the heck it is. Would that also be considered a job advertisement?
I think a job posting, an email, a social media post, a phone call, they're all job ads. They're just taking on a different form. And you have to adapt the form according to the medium or the channel. So specifically to answer your question, whereas a job posting or a job advert is a one-to-many medium, an email on LinkedIn, let's say, is a one-to-one. So the tone of voice has to change slightly. I think the tactics need to change. So whereas a job ad may be 350, 400 words, you can't deliver 400 words in your first message because you're just begging people not to read it. Yeah. Or sending them attachments. Yeah. Or sending them attachments. So my approach, and this is an approach I've come up with, I haven't borrowed this from anyone else, although I suspect a lot of good advertisers do this, is I make the first message so short that if somebody opens it, it's impossible for them not to read it. So what I mean by that is 60 or 70 words. Yeah. So let me give you an example. Hi, Jeff. I'm recruiting for an XYZ position that I think you'll be interested in because benefit 1, benefit 2. Would you like some more info? That's it. So you make it as easy as possible for them to respond yes. You give them such little information that they can't avoid, they can't not read it, and you make it about them and something that potentially may be better than their current situation. And depending on who the target audience is, I mean, some audiences are tougher than others. Software developers spring to mind. But it's statistically more likely to get people to engage with them. Once they've engaged, they've made a commitment, then you can pretty much send them what you like in the second message because they'll probably read it.
So a lot of companies have legal or marketing or HR write these job descriptions or job ads, but really recruiters are the ones interacting with the candidates. Should companies also give recruiters of examples of different kinds of messages that would be acceptable or ones that would really help engage those candidates better that are more brand specific? Or do you just let the recruiters run wild and freely across the range here?
I think it depends what type of recruiters we're talking about. In-house recruiters, I think everything you've just said is a consideration. Agency recruiters that are running job ads that are not revealing who the hiring company is, as far as I'm concerned, they can do what they like. It's their job. They're supposed to be good at that, and they've got to put what information they think is most likely to get enough of the right people.
There's a lot of junior recruiters that they don't know what they don't know, right? Most of them have never been trained on how to recruit. They are more or less the traditional post, search, and pray, right? They post the job on the job board. They search the job board for, some keyword skill sets, and then they pray they can hope they can find the right candidate, or the right candidate can find them. They haven't really learned how to recruit. They push paper pushing recruiters is what we used to call them. So
they copy what they see, or they're told, look, this is how we post jobs, and so they think, well, that's how you do it, and they don't question it. Why would they? There's been quite a few rookie recruiters who have come onto our training courses in the days when we were doing them in the classroom. And what's great about most of them is that there's nothing to unpack. Many of them are a product of the social media generation. And that's sort of popularized a more informal, conversational kind of tone of voice in general in B2B communications. And actually, they tend to get up and running quicker than more experienced recruiters who have got into those bad habits. So, there's pros and cons. But, a lot of them just do what they're told and do what they see.
Job advertisements account for a majority of the candidate traffic. And the study I read a few years ago stated that approximately 90% of jobs would be filled with little to no involvement from the recruiter. So if you can drive a ton of candidate traffic using job ads, what's the whole point of the recruiter and candidate engagement? Why is that important, right?
Right. So you're talking about agency recruiters.
Any kind of recruiting. I mean, this holds true for corporate recruiting also.
Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack there potentially. Look, in my experience, hiring managers want as little to do with recruiting as possible until it gets to final 2 or 3 or 4 people, or reviewing CVs or resumes, that have already been vetted. So whether they do all that nitty gritty stuff at the front end, like read 60, 70 CVs, not dismiss people too quickly and check them out on LinkedIn first and do some proper research on resumes that look like they might be possible, and take phone calls to candidates in the evenings and at weekends when they can talk. Most hiring managers won't do these things. Make notes, blah, blah, blah. And to do all those nitty gritty things that have to be done to just build a long list, let alone a short list. And then do screening phone calls and or first interviews. A lot of them want that done for them. So I'm not so sure, but they could certainly attract more candidates themselves directly if they listen to their marketing department, but I'm not sure a lot of marketing departments are going to help them, because most marketing that I see from companies they've got this almost this fetish about talking about themselves all of the time. Even their product advertising is about them, not about their target customer, which
they definitely go into feature benefit mode, right? Or problem solution mode. And they do that in their job descriptions. And this is most evident when they put the About Us section right at the top, is what I find. And it's a great way to not only kill candidate engagement, candidate communication, but it's also a great way to kill your SEO for your job site, right? So take that About section and put it at the bottom. Don't put it at the top. It's
absolutely. It's not, most candidates, it's not their primary concern. Their primary concern is this a job that I would want to do? And is it a job that I can do? And if the answer to both those questions is yes, then I think then they'd say, right, let's see who the company are. And if that stacks up, you've got them.
Top level, 4 questions. Can I do the job? Do I want to do the job? Where is it located? Can I do it from home, or do I have to be in the office?
The money,
is it a reasonable commute? So something about location. And then lastly, it's always going to be about salary. Those are the 4 top questions, right? Yeah. Now, later on, you may have other questions Is it a great cultural fit? Do they have good 401k benefits? Are they a startup and offering any kind of, stock options or, RDUs or RSUs or whatever? So there's lots of other questions that come later down the road. Do you recommend answering those questions in your job adverts or any kind of communication right off the bat?
No, I don't. I think a job ad has to do its job. And let's put this into context. I mean, there are a lot of phases to the recruitment process from start to finish, which invariably involves looking at candidates, either proactively or reactively, looking at their CV, looking at their profile, getting back in touch with them or making contact with them, assessing whether they might be a fit, either through email exchanges and or a phone call for 10 minutes. And finding out what else is going on in their lives, what else they're doing, how quickly you might need to move. All this other tactical stuff has to be done. But look, a job ad is no more than a lead generator. That's all it is. Its job is to get people to contact you who might be a good fit for that job. Right. And that's when the real recruiting starts.
So is your course focused more on contingency or retained search recruiters, or can any kind of corporate recruiter use this to attract candidates as well?
It doesn't make any difference. That in-house corporate recruiters and agency recruiters have different kind of boundaries around them, but we've noticed actually that's not true. Look, in the 7 or so years we've been running this training, and we're talking 1,200 or so recruiters having gone through it, roughly. Now it might be a little bit more. It's roughly a 50-50 split in terms of corporate agency recruiters. May even be slightly higher in corporate. And I put that down mainly to they probably have bigger training budgets. Agencies tend to be a little bit tight when it comes to spending money compared to a lot of other businesses anyway. But I think agencies have more to benefit. And on that, I've noticed that the output in the short term, straight after the training from agency recruiters tends to be better. They probably have more motivation for a variety
agency recruiters. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're talking about 20-30% fee, they absolutely have a big motivation right there. Motivates me at least. So can you take a few seconds and let's kind of map out a campaign and write some actual messages, or at least verbally here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to send a LinkedIn invite. Then somebody's going to reply and we're going to have some kind of call to action to get them on a phone call. Then when we speak to them, we want to get them to apply, right? That's kind of a normal sequence. So what would you say in a brand new LinkedIn invite?
It would vary depending on who the target candidate is, what job they did. Are they a warehouse manager? Are they a software engineer? Are they an operations director? It will vary. It really will.
Right. So let me I'll give mine as an example and you can tear it apart and say, yeah, Jeff, that's great. Go with it, right? So right now, this message we use in different variations, different forms, but we get about a 30 to 40% response rate. And of those, we have about another 30 to 40% that actually go through the apply sequence after we reach out, right? So, hi, my name's Jeff. I'm a recruiter I've got a position for. I was asked to reach out to you in confidence about a specific opportunity for a blank. I'd really love to have a conversation with you. Okay. When are you available? Send me your best email and phone.
Okay. Look, that kind of message for me would work with a category of candidate that doesn't often get approached by headhunters or doesn't often see job ads that relate to them, either because it's incredibly niche or because they're working at the higher end of the food chain, salary-wise. Yeah, and people like that do tend to manage their careers a little bit better than a lot of other people. So they tend to entertain those kind of messages and or phone calls more readily than, say, a software engineer or a marketing manager earning $80,000 a year, or even recruiters, dare I say. I've tried directly sourcing recruiters, and surprisingly, some of them can be quite indignant about having received a message. So look, the
recruiters are tough to recruit.
There's a whole complex kind of thing going on there, which is a show on its own.
So let's take a software engineer.
Let me just make the last
I would
point.
never use that message going out to a software engineer because they get hundreds of these every single week. And it would sound like every other recruiter, right?
Absolutely.
The whole point
Absolutely.
of the first message is A, you've got to differentiate yourself. B, you've got to get them interested. Call to action is call me now, give me a message, whatever. So how do you what's your system, what's your framework, if you will?
The most significant change I would make to the message you just read out to me was the last line, which was I'd love. It was something I'd love to arrange a phone call, and nobody cares what you'd love, because you're referring to a need that you have rather than a need that they might have. So I would rather you replace that with, I think this is something you might be interested in because, and just give them a reason, whatever that benefit is. If you've taken if you had the right intake meeting and you've asked the hiring manager, why would somebody quit a job to come and work here? And they've given you sensible answers, you'll have 3, 4, 5 potential benefits, some of which might apply to that particular person.
All right, Mitch, you're getting into some pretty advanced stuff here. Actually taking information from the conversation you had with the hiring manager and then using it as ammunition in your messaging. That's pretty unique. Not a whole lot of people teach that.
Okay, it's not part of the training. We refer to it and we refer to how important it is. And there's a downloadable document that has all the questions they might need to take a brief. But look, recruitment is only actually about 2 areas of activity. It's about attraction and it's about assessment. And agency recruiters, even in-house recruiters, don't do that much assessment because the people most qualified to do that are hiring managers. So what we tend to do is we screen, rather than actually do a full-on behavioural first interview. And so the only thing that's left to be really good at is attraction. And I think certainly of agency recruiters, their primary focus should be selling jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have the attraction piece down, so your qualification piece should not be for qualification of the skill set. It's very peripherally, right, or top level, right? But you should be qualifying for interest and availability, not skill set as much. You need to really deeply qualify, as far as I'm concerned, really qualify them for interest and availability, and then skill sets. The best place to do that is with a hiring manager or the on-site recruiter, depending on what the process is.
So sometimes, Jeff, one of the barriers can sometimes be, and I've heard other recruiters say this, particularly junior recruiters, who can sometimes be a little bit intimidated by an experienced hiring manager or client. Some of them don't think they have to sell their jobs for whatever reason. It might be the name of the company, the stature of the company. And sometimes they might be right if they work for Disney or Google, but most of the time they're not. And that has to be addressed somehow. They have to be made aware of, the candidate's perspective. And most of them have been a candidate. They have to understand that the job has to be sold to somebody who's in a job they don't need to leave. Before asking that, why would somebody quit a job to work here question, I actually soften up the hiring manager by asking this question beforehand, which is the person we're looking for likely to be employed or unemployed? To which 19 times out of 20, they'll say employed. And they'll say that either because they've got their finger on the pulse and they understand that it's a candidate-driven market in whatever that job discipline is, or they're biased and they think unemployed people are useless because they're unemployed. But that just sets them up for the second question, because once they've agreed that, this person's going to be in a job, then we're in safe territory to start pushing them around on the question of, well, so why would somebody quit a job to work here? They have to give answers, and they do. You just have to jog them along a bit.
And those answers you can actually use in your invite. Can you give me an example? Let's do a little bit of role playing. I'm the software engineering manager. We're trying to hire a front-end UX software engineer, right? And somebody should absolutely join my company. We just got our first round of funding, and we are really growing fast right now.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Look, it's not a job discipline I've ever recruited for, so this is very much off the top of my head. But maybe I would say, look, it's an interesting startup. They're well funded. The benefit to you would be that here you would get to own the entire process. Yeah, and you're not inheriting a legacy system. You can put into practice all those things you've learned in the last 7 years here without any interference. To some people, that will be music to their ears.
Especially for a junior recruiter that, they've got a senior manager there that can help them, mentor them, and things like that. but it'd be good to, be able to make mistakes and fun stuff like that, right?
Yeah, always. I mean, that comes with territory in all jobs. But, people have to be given a reason, not to want the job. Initially, you have to give them a reason to want to keep reading either the message or the job posting or the email that you send them. And then, once you've got some indication that, this sounds like something they might be interested in, that's when I would go for a phone call. Although, again, that would depend. Salespeople, marketing people, people in the comms business tend to prefer to talk over the phone quicker than, say, accountants and software engineers, who tended to want to get things tied up in an email and written form first before committing to a phone call. So everything's got to be adapted slightly depending on the situation, for sure.
All right. So let's say your call to action is more focused towards them, right? Because this would benefit you, et cetera. How do you get them on a call? What's kind of some words or phrases?
I would normally try and do that in the second or third message, depending on who I'm talking to. I need to give them enough information for them to, as we said earlier, think that this might be a job they want that might be better than the one that they're doing or the others that they're applying for, and that they're confident it's a job that they could do. And possibly even it's a job they might learn something from doing as well, because that's probably the biggest single motivator for most people is working here going to make me better at what I do? I just think it's then once that's been achieved and they've given some kind of affirmation that, I'm still interested, then let's talk and let's fill in the gaps, because you can fill in the gaps and color it in a lot more effectively verbally than you often can in writing.
What about, so we've got the invite, they've accepted the invite, we've got a communication back and forth going back either through email or in-mail or text message per se, whatever the platform it is, it doesn't matter. How do you, what are some words and phrases that we can use to get them on a phone call?
Well, I don't think it's as simple as words or phrases, because that tends to lean towards fancy rhetoric. And some people ask me, surely you need to be a little bit creative to be good at writing copy or to learn copywriting. And you really don't. You just need to get the right information and arrange it in the right way and deliver it in the right way.
And I always say that don't worry about the words and phrases so much, worry about the objective. Right? So if your objective of that call or that email is to get them onto a call, then don't ask them to have, or don't put in there 3 or 4 different calls to action. Don't ask them to like your social media, and then ask them for referrals, and then ask them for, to go and apply to the job. It's too many calls to action. Know specifically what your action is. So your invite, in my opinion, is to get on a call, or at least get them to accept your invite.
But they've got to have good reason, Jeff, to want to take the call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, as long as we agree on that, then the right time to get them on a call is they'll want to take the call if the job sounds better than the one that they're doing. And how quickly you can achieve that, well, that will depend. But normally it shouldn't take more than 2 messages.
Right. So know what your objective is right up at the front, right? If your objective is to get them on a call, then get them on a call. Don't ask for referrals. Sure, I never ask for referrals up front. That's
it's dumb. It's dumb.
And
it's showing a lack of respect to the person you're talking to as well.
Not only that, but it's like, by the way, I don't want you. I want the people that you're going to refer. I mean, especially if you compliment them in the beginning. Hey, I took a look at your LinkedIn profile or your resume. I was really impressed by your background. Oh, by the way, I want your referrals. It doesn't mentally make sense.
No,
right?
It doesn't come. On the call to action, also, if we're talking about a call to action on a job posting, I actually do think where you're allowed, and a lot of job boards won't allow this, but certainly if it's on your own careers page or jobs page, giving people 2 or 3 options is not a bad idea. Some people might not be ready to upload a CV. Some people would rather, have an email exchange or give them a phone number. So I often like calls to action that give people, or even look me up on LinkedIn. The other classic mistake that job postings make is, particularly for those jobs where it's unlikely there are going to be too many of the target candidates in between jobs or out of work, is the call to action is simply click apply, which means they've got to upload a CV. Now, if they're in a job that they don't need to leave, there's a pretty good chance their CV's not up to date, or their resume, sorry, keep forgetting who I'm talking to. If their resume is not up to date, then that's it. That excludes them, and you've lost them. And if someone's read right to the end of the ad, shows that they're interested, and their thought process is, actually, this sounds like it might be of some interest, and the only way that they can respond is by uploading a resume, then you're probably going to lose them, most of them. And given that we only need to find one, is kind of tragic.
Let me clarify the call to action there, because you did bring up a good point, right? You should, have your phone number, your email, and then an apply, right? So there's a couple different schools of thought, if you will. The communication channel doesn't really matter. If you give your cell phone number and say, text me, or give you a phone number and say, call me, or give you an email, that's really the same call to action. It's, I want to talk to you, right? What the medium is or what the format is really doesn't matter. It's the same call to action. Well, if you give them options, that's not a different call to action. However, communication is different than an apply now, to your point, right?
Look, I would frame it differently from, I want to talk to you, to why don't you let me give you some more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's some more information. Here's all my contact information. Connect with me. I don't care how you connect with me.
Connect with me.
Communication options.
Yeah, but connect with me so that I can give you more information about the job, so you can make a firm decision about whether you want to move on. Yeah, you've got to be patient in recruitment if you're going to recruit the right people. Yeah, and the best candidates aren't culled from a job ad or a message campaign and put in front of a client inside 3 days. They just aren't. It takes longer than that if they're discernible in any way. Those candidates. The only candidates that behave that way are candidates who need another job.
That's an important kind of distinction, right? If they're especially if they're currently a passive candidate, if they're employed, right, and they're happily employed, it's going to take longer than a one-call close to get them on a call with a hiring manager.
Yeah, it is. And look, I'd argue if someone is genuinely happily employed, then they're probably not going to entertain you. I think, if you're just sending out job descriptions randomly to people with the right keywords, really all you're doing as a recruiter is hoping you're going to bump into people who are in jobs that they hate.
Yeah.
And they'll respond. But most people, the majority of people, according to all of the reports I've seen down the years, the majority of people are open to looking at other job opportunities if it sounds better than the one that they're doing. Most people have a dissatisfaction area in their current job. They might start to be getting bored. Their manager might be pissing them off a little bit. They're not learning anything. They think they're worth more. They got passed over for promotion last year, which is still niggling them. There's some things going on, even if people are not waking up hating their job every morning. And those are the people that you're trying to reach. And it's not that hard. You just have to give them reasons why this job might be better. And
don't make up these reasons. I think the ultimate moral of the story here is, Mitch, that if you're in a conversation with that hiring manager, what you're really doing is, you're looking for minimum skill set, but you're also looking for reasons why a candidate would want to come work for this company, this department, and more importantly, this hiring manager or with this team. Why? Because that's where they're going to be spending majority of their life going forward, 8 to 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. They spend more time at work than they do with their own family, right? So that's kind of important.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, things like culture are important, but again, it gets overblown. And, I see companies trying to sell themselves on culture, and all that does is it encourages them to talk about themselves even more than they are already doing. We're fun, we're wacky, we have barbecue, we have staff barbecues once a month. It's all about them. A better way to convey culture, I think, is tone of voice. It's not cutting and pasting the language from the job description, which is a compliance document, essentially. And it's writing the way you would speak. Make it conversational, make the sentences short, use simple words, don't use jargon, get straight to the point, don't have long bullet points of requirements, don't have big list of nice to haves, because that's just going to put off the qualified people.
Well, you just killed my next question, which was, what are the 3 biggest mistakes companies make or recruiters make, right? So you just ran through a good list of 8 or 10 of them.
Well, I was thinking about this for something I was working on earlier. The biggest one is companies talk about themselves and what they want. That's the biggest mistake all job postings make. It's all about
5 years in, 3 years at.
But when they're done talking about themselves, they then talk about what they want the person to do and then what that person has to have. And then the really arrogant ones end with, we'll only contact those people that we're interested in, which is, well, it's madness. Agencies' biggest mistakes is they try and sell the jobs by using way too many adjectives like exciting and fantastic and passionate and transformational and unique, none of which mean anything. You have to tell people what is unique about that particular aspect of the job or the company or why it's exciting. And they put too long a list of requirements. Yeah. And I've rarely ever gone to market in 25 years with any kind of job content that carries more than 3 non-negotiable. What are the minimum 3 things that this person needs to know and or be good at to be able to do this job? And when I ask hiring managers that, they give me 3 things. And I need that because I need to be able to measure the effectiveness of what I've delivered. And if I've delivered 3 people that have those 3 qualities and I've sussed them out for availability, does it make sense for them to do this job? Is the money right? Is the location right? Then I know I've done my job, and then there's maybe a problem somewhere else, i.e. with the hiring manager or with some other biases. So yeah, but for me, the biggest one is companies and agencies do this themselves. They talk too much about the client or the client's opinion of themselves. And most of the best candidates aren't interested in that stuff. The only people that tend to fall for that are junior people who are beginning their work life rather than those in the middle or the second half of it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of company or candidates that will never work for any of the bigger companies like, Google, IBM. They just won't work there. That's not what interests them, right? When you get into large software development environments like that, it's a completely different story and completely different work environment than working on, a small little startup that's trying to, release, maybe they got, 2,000 employees or whatever, right? But it's a completely different work environment.
So put that into context, Jeff, very quickly. Several years ago, one of our students contacted me and said, look, I need some job ads written for some really hard to fill jobs. They were DevOps people, in US dollars.
Tough jobs.
Absolutely, 120, 140 US dollars a year level positions. There were 4 different jobs. And they asked me to write them for them. So me and the copywriter that I chose to work with did that. But in order to be able to write them, I spent 3.5 hours at the company's offices talking to 5 or 6 DevOps people, the head of recruitment and HR, and asked lots and lots of questions, the same questions, picked up the patterns, worked out, these are the things that are on offer here, then worked out the best way to sell them. And recruiters need to go through a smaller version of that process for each job. And often it doesn't take more than 20 minutes to get the right information you need about one job from one hiring manager, if you ask the right questions.
I was just going to get down to, this really comes down to, are you asking the right questions when you're doing intake meetings with the hiring manager or even, the ops manager, whoever's making that hire, right? So are there some questions that you would recommend that people ask or recruiters ask to kind of get to the right information?
Well, look, the parent question is the one I mentioned earlier, is why would somebody quit a job to come and do this one? And I deliberately use the word quit their job because I need to add color in the hiring manager's mind about what a big deal this is, because changing employers is one of the 6 most stressful things we all do. It's right up there with getting married, giving a speech, getting divorced, buying a house, all of those things. So once they start, then I have to start evaluating the answers they give me. So if they give me some nonsense like, well, we're a market leader, then you have to follow up, because that on its own is not enough. What is it about you being, well, first of all, are you actually the market leader or are you a market leader? Are you one of 20 or are you one of 1? Yeah, and we need to nail that down. But if it's true, which often it isn't, what is it about your position in the market that is going to make this particular job more enjoyable? And that will be different depending whether it's a job in marketing or a job in ops or a job in engineering. It will be different. or it may be non-existent. But yeah, you have to keep scraping away. But the big ones are things like challenge. How is it a bigger challenge than these candidates might have done before? Is this a step up in terms of knowledge that they might acquire? Is there a great training program where they can learn new skills? There's all the kind of hygiene stuff that's popular at the moment, which is work from home, well-being programs. There's autonomy. There's the manager. There's the culture of the department. There's the growth plans and what that means to their progression opportunity. There are literally, I made a list about a year ago and I got up to about 63 that are different. It could be something as simple, it's an easier commute to, if you target candidates who live 100 miles away, as opposed, So, I mean, it can get complicated. I don't want to get too much into the long grass, but there's a ton of things. You just have to keep asking the question until you get things that you think, yes, that is likely to turn somebody on who's doing this job. Not everyone. These benefits aren't going to apply to every single potential candidate. Your job is to appeal to enough of them to be able to fill the job.
Yeah, and I think this is largely a part, if you're in a corporate environment, this is largely a part of what employer branding should be doing, or at least your recruitment marketing team. They should be identifying what those benefits are. And then I always provided recruiting guidelines, right? So we give recruiting guidelines to all of our recruiters on, let's say, the DevOps team or the sales team or whatever kind of jobs they're recruiting for, and say, look, a DevOps person is probably going to want to work here because, A, B, C, maybe a D, and then it might be completely different for the sales team, right? But you need to provide that, right? Recruiters don't need to go and discover that. It might be a bit of discovery for a specific hiring manager or a specific department. But if a lot of that work is, duplicated over and over and over again, you're just recruiting for the same department, do all that research up front.
Yeah.
That's what you should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a lot is going to depend on whether certainly the agency recruiter, what kind of relationship they have with the client. Is it a good client? Do they have a track record with them? Are they retained? And if they're retained, they should be spending a lot of time. I mean, I've had intake meetings that have taken as long as 6 hours, albeit across 3 different meetings, just to advertise one job. I mean, the end was
when the client doesn't know what they're looking for, either from a skill set perspective or from a what does a perfect candidate look like? If they can't answer that question, sometimes it's like pulling teeth, right? You could be at the dentist for 3 hours.
Yeah, you can. And I always avoid using the word ideal or perfect. Yeah. Because that's creating
it doesn't exist, right?
My back. Yeah.
It doesn't exist except in the hiring manager's mind. And even then they don't know what they look like, right? So
There was one other thing actually that I had in my mind that I wanted to make, and you might be able to do something with this yourself. And that's that there's a lot of talk online at the moment about recruiters being better at using social media and building a personal brand or building an agency brand, which I think is pretty tricky. And what to do about content and coming up with ideas for blogs and articles and for me, and I'm biased, I accept this, but I'm going to make a case for this. I think there was one area of an agency's business in particular that is constantly providing with an unending stream of information and data and content, and that's jobs. If each recruiter brings on 3 or 4 new jobs a week with 3 or 4 different clients, that's 3 or 4 different situations, cultures, benefits, all kinds of things that you can, you just keep pumping out semi-decent job ads that speak to the needs of the candidate. Eventually, that target candidate, if you specialize, which most agencies do these days, will start to actually remember that agency as, oh, those are the guys that put out those interesting ads. That's how you build a brand, is through advertising. So rather than coming up with different ways of saying exactly the same thing as every other recruiter, you've got fresh content at your disposal all the time, and that's jobs. And that's, for me, where the marketing rubber hits the road, is jobs. Everything else is in support of that, because that's the tip of the arrow, really, isn't it?
Well, Mitch, fantastic conversation. I could go on with you for another 2 or 3 hours. Where can people find you?
Okay. Well, I'm dead easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm based in the UK, obviously. My accent probably gave that away.
You have an accent? I didn't notice.
Yeah, no, I'm not from Alabama. And my website is copywritingforrecruiters.com. It pretty much tells you what you're going to find in the URL. New website coming soon, which is going to be a lot better than one at the moment. It's been temporary, albeit for about a year or so. So yeah, I'm dead easy to find.
Awesome. So give me your best Alabama accent.
Oh, you're joking. There's no way. I can't do voices. I can't even
Come on, try it. You got to try it.
No, I only used Alabama because when I was in America several years ago, somebody made a joke about me being from Alabama. I can't remember what it was, but so that's why it was top of my head. Sorry. Sorry.
Bless your heart.
Thank you.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the 10X Candidate Experience Show. Make it a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye.